like to call the village board to order for Tuesday, January 27th, 2026. Roll call, please.
Trustee Service?
Here.
Trustee Paul? Who may be muted online.
Here.
Gary, I think we have about 100 of you.
There's that many watching me from Florida.
We're going to do our best to correct the audio. Trustee Zerbal?
Here.
Trustee Atkinson?
Here.
Trustee Krieger?
Here.
President Kardasky?
Here. Please stand for the pledge. And please remember our men and women throughout the world in uniform. I have no changes to the agenda. I need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 5, comments from the public during the public comment period and pursuant to Wisconsin statute, section 19.84, parent 2. Individuals must state their name and address. Comments are limited to items not on the agenda. Comments are limited to 5 minutes. Personnel issues cannot be discussed nor individuals named. The board's role is to listen and receive information from the public, and the board is not able to take action at this meeting. Is there anybody from the public who would like to come up and comment? Please state your name and address for the record.
Okay. My name is Zeke Probelski. I live at 2455 Bay Area Place. I am the Brown County Supervisor for District 21, which is the greater part of Ashwaubenon, wards 1 through 8. Just want to go over a couple things that we've done on our board this past month. One was I serve on the Planning, Development, and Transportation Committee. It was brought to our attention by the town of Holland that they have a landfill site out there that we use and we pay fees for, but we don't pay fees for reusable waste products, which is basically sand and dirt that we use for road construction. So we passed a motion to support and request the administration to put together a negotiating team to meet with the negotiating team from the town of Holland to attempt to resolve the landfill beneficial issues. They are requesting that we pay them tipping fees for this reusable sand and dirt that we keep out there, which we maintain, but they feel that we should pay tipping fees. More to follow on that. Later on, or earlier this month, I also serve on the Land Conservation Committee, and earlier this month I attended the Lake Michigan Area Land and Water Conservation Association Planning and Budget meeting at the Brown County Stem Cell Innovation Center located on the UWGB campus. Very informative meeting. We went over topics such as soil inversion, water runoff, tile installation, animal production, milk production, nitrate levels, and of course fertilizer, chemical, and manure levels. And I now know more about manure than I ever thought I would ever know in my entire life. So, more to follow on. More to follow on that, hopefully.
I won't make any
That's all I
comment. I won't make any comment on that.
Okay. It is. Never mind. I won't say that. Thank you, Madam President, for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rick Van Lannen, 2673 Pioneer Drive. I'm the new Brown County Supervisor for District 22, which includes wards 9, 10, 11, 12 in Ashwaubenon, and wards 1, 2, 3, 4, and 7 in town of Lawrence. And I took over for Tom Peters recently in December. He stepped away, I believe, due to personal matters, and I want to thank him for almost six years of his service to Brown County and this community. I share a lot of what his vision is with the community. I look forward to working with the municipalities, especially the village of Ashwaubenon and the town of Lawrence, to see continued growth in the area, especially the equalized value growth, and also keeping this safe community. A little bit about my background. I graduated from UW Green Bay with a 4-year accounting degree, and I had 31 years of service with the Department of Revenue, State Department of Revenue. 25 of that auditing Fortune 500 companies, and also about 30 years of real estate investment experience within the community. So I understand property taxes, et cetera, and also, you know, working with businesses, the interaction between businesses and government is very important to keep that economic growth going. I've been going around introducing myself to the various residents, and I want to provide a compliment. A lot of times in this business, we get a lot of complaints, but I want to offer up a compliment. So I go around to talking with people and introducing myself, saying I've been in the village of Ashwaubenon since 1991, raised my family here. They've gone to the schools here, and it's just been a great community. And I can tell you this, that every one of those hundreds of people that I've talked with, they've said the same thing. This is a great community. We're glad that we live here. We're fortunate that it is a great place to raise a family. And, you know, I think that's a reflection of the leadership of both, or with the village of Ashwaubenon, town of Lawrence, the county, and both past and present leadership. And I think that's a fine compliment for everybody to take. And so I'm glad to offer that up. A couple of things that I have regarding the county matters. One is we recently recorded our last meeting. We're trying to put forth a recording of our meetings like you do here. And but there's a ways to go yet on that, where we just recorded it, and we're going to introduce it to the vendor for closed captioning, and also see if the microphones are working properly. But we've got a lot of liability issues that we have to address also, so that's going to be an ongoing thing. And but we have introduced that now, and we'll see where that goes. One side thing that I personally am working with Troy Struckenbach, our executive of Brown County. There's a bill, State Senate bill from Senator Wimberger, number 546, and it deals with providing additional judges, assistant DAs, and staff to alleviate the backup caseload. And I think it's important that the residents and people, you know, yourselves, reach out to the senators to try to get that bill passed. I think it's important for the whole community. So, that's all I have for now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else have anything that they'd like to talk about? Not on tonight's agenda. Okay, moving forward. Number 6, written communications or announcements. This is the fun part of my job. We have a proclamation recognizing Boomerang Management as Ashwaubonon's 2025 Community Excellence Award recipient. So if you gentlemen could come right up here.
So if you haven't witnessed anyway, Mary's kind of in and out of losing her voice, so she's asked me to read the proclamation on her behalf. Normally Mary would do it, but she's nervous that she might lose her voice as she's reading through it. So again, thanks everybody for coming out and enjoying this opportunity to recognize Boomerang Management. So I'm going to read the proclamation, and then we'll take some photographs and give you guys a good round of applause. So the proclamation reads, honoring Boomerang Management as the 2025 Community Excellence Award for the Village of Ashwaubenon. Proclamation reads, whereas the Village Board of Trustees of the Village of Ashwaubenon wishes to annually honor an organization or person who makes extraordinary efforts to improve our community. And whereas Boomerang Management is an entertainment and venue management group in the Village of Ashwaubenon. And whereas Boomerang Management, owned by Mark Scogan, operates properties including Capital Credit Union Park, the Green Bay Rockers, Boomerang Catering, the baseball cages, and Epic Event Center, and has been heavily involved in the Ashwaubenon community for over 5 years now. And whereas Mark Scogan and Boomerang Management have invested in significant other economic development projects in the community, including the Navarro Apartments and mixed-use development on the corner of Holmgren Way and Cormier Road. And whereas Boomerang Management, owners and operators of Green Bay Rockers Baseball in 2025, won the organization's second Northwoods League title in 3 years, and the organization also received its second Organization of the Year award in that same time frame. Now, therefore, be it resolved with the deepest appreciation of these efforts in community outreach and excellence, the Village Board of Trustees of the Village of Ashwaubenon does hereby recognize and award Boomerang Management the 2025 Community Excellence Award. Congratulations.
I'm just going to take a second here just to say thank you so very much for the investment that you've made into our community. We went through COVID together, and that was always challenging, but you know, you did it. You put a great product on the field, and it got people out. And just thank you for everything that you've done. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
I got a box for you, Brian.
Take just a second. Okay, now the second written communication that I have a letter here from Tracy Fluke that she gave me and asked me to please read it at the village board. Dear Mary, for professional and personal reasons, I have made the decision to resign from my position as trustee for the village of Ashwaubenon. My last day will be January 2nd, 2026. I would like to thank the residents in Ward 11 and 12 for their support and trust in me. I have enjoyed serving them and encourage residents to work with their new trustee and stay involved in local government. I respectfully request this letter be read at the village board meeting on January 27, 2026. Sincerely, Tracy Fluke. So, thank you. Okay, any other communications? Hearing none, we'll go to number 7, public hearings. Public hearing on Ordinance 01-1-26, rezoning a part of the parcel VA-L185 from P Public Use District to R1 One Family Residence District located at 3600 Lost Lane. Aaron.
All right, I'll just share my screen to bring up a map of the, there you go. The proposed rezoning, as indicated on the map up there, is the western part of the parcel that hosts Oakwood Church at parcel VA-L185. The request is to rezone the property from P Public Use, which is its current zoning, to R1 One Family Residence, consistent with the zoning classifications to the west and to the north. A certified survey map was submitted to split the property off, provided that the rezoning was approved. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Okay, hearing none, I need a motion to close the hearing.
Move to close hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Number 8, action on the consent agenda. 8A, consider, discuss, act on the open session minutes and closed session minutes of the December 16, 2025 Village Board meeting. B, receive and accept the 2025 Village Fund financial reports. C, consider, discuss, act on a regular Class B beer, Class B liquor license for LOF2 Green Bay TRS LLC, DBA Delta Hotels by Marriott Green Bay. D, consider, discuss, act on the budgeted expenditures for periods between 11/20/25 to 1/16/2026. E, receive and accept the December 2025 investment report. F, receive and accept the tax increment district number 3 completion audit. G, receive and accept the tax increment district number 4 final audit. H, receive and accept the January 2026 Public Works Department report. I, consider, discuss, act on agreement for contractor emergency services between the Village of Ashwaubenon and DeKaiser Construction. J, receive and accept January 2026 Parks, Rec, and Forestry Department reports. Does anybody want anything taken out and discussed? If not, I need a motion to approve.
I'll move to approve. Second.
Motion and a second to approve all those items. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 9, ordinances and/or resolutions. 9A, consider, discuss, act on ordinance 01-1-26, rezoning a part of parcel VA-L185 from P Public Use District to R1 One Family Residence District located at 3600 Lost Lane. That's the public hearing we just had. Does anybody have any questions?
I'll move to approve the redistricting to R1 at 3600 Lost Lane.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve the rezoning at 3600 Lost Lane. Any other comments, conditions, concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 9B, consider, discuss, act on resolution R1-1-2026 to permit the sale of fermented malt beverage in Ashwaubomay Park for the 2026 Ashwaubomay food truck rallies and the Ashwaubenon Blast.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution R1-1-2026 to permit the sale of fermented malt beverages in Ashwaubomay Park for the 2026 Ashwaubomay food truck rallies and the Ashwaubenon Blast.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve resolution R1-1-2026. Any other comments, concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 10, other items of business. 10A, consider, discuss, act on bike and ped comprehensive plan. Rex.
For the last year, the Bike and Pedestrian Committee, as well as Devin Yoder from Brown County Planning and staff have remodeled or revised the comprehensive plan for the bike and pedestrian comprehensive plan. So Devin is here. He's just going to just give some highlights of what was done in the last year and take any questions the board may have.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. And yeah, like Rick said, I'm just going to make some brief comments, high-level overview. So we started work on this.
Could you state your name and
Oh,
address for the
sorry.
record, please?
Do you say address too?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Devin Yoder, 1224 South Irwin Avenue, Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we started work on this last January and worked very closely with the Bike and Pedestrian Committee along with village staff and met with them a number of times through that process. And all the drafting, each iteration we brought back before the committee and reviewed it with them. And also had a kind of a workshop session too in October just to go over some of the more specific items in the plan. As far as the highlights go for the update, some of it was just updating demographic information, along with making sure any current village plan that you have was recognized in that plan too, so it was consistent. Also updating GIS data, and that's both for us and for the village to have that data just so we know where things are and making sure that's current. And then really the main bulk of it was working on updating and revising the goals and objectives. Most of those remain the same, but we had some good discussions on that. And really what that led to was in kind of the outcome of the plan being less specific about individual places where future things, but there are certain projects that are already planned and those were acknowledged. But then going forward, what would be looked at more is for collectors and arterial streets when those are considered to be reconstructed or redone. Then at that time is when the village would look at those more closely and consider what facilities would be appropriate and look at it more closely that way. So that was kind of the big outcome of that. And then we also included a public input component, which we held through May and into June, and that was an online survey, and got good feedback from that too. So that's kind of what I had, but if you have any questions or want any further details, I'd be happy to take that now.
I would just like to thank Rex, Joel, Aaron, Brian Rickard for the input that they had on the bike and ped plan. I know that it took a while to get it done, but it does take a while to get these things done. They did a great job, so I'd like to thank everybody for that.
I thought it was impressive. It's very comprehensive. The only thing that struck me when I read it was there are no like deadlines for any of the goals or objectives or anything. I'm wondering if it would be valuable to have that included, because it's setting forth goals for the next 20 years, but like how do we measure if we're accomplishing the goals of this plan if we don't have a deadline by which we can say we were supposed to have this done by now and this done by then? And
Sure. Well, some of those things are really almost ongoing. You know, when you're really considering, again, anything new, that's almost when you look at those goals and objectives and ask the question, you know, are we meeting this at this time? So, and I think it's partially because there aren't really specific projects in there where it's like you must do it at this time. Otherwise, I would say it's almost really an ongoing thing. And, you know, if that happens annually or a certain amount of time, obviously that's up to the village on how to handle that. But that's kind of why there weren't specific deadlines attached to it.
If I could,
I can also add to that, maybe Rex was too, is that was actually kind of a conscientious decision that the committee made to not identify that, because it was felt that in the previous plan, we had those very specific goals and timelines that as a result of maybe shifting priorities or shifting vision, that it almost seemed like we were failing the plan because we weren't hitting certain targets that had been planned 5 or 10 years ago. So I think this plan was to be designed in a manner that it's very kind of vision driven versus very static and objective driven. The idea behind that too is that it would coincide with our strategic plan, and that these goals and objectives then would align with our capital improvement plan. And in each of those plans, we can drill down and become more granular about what types of projects should be included in the next 5-year cycle of activity in the village.
got it?
One question I had is how does this compare to, you know, I don't know if every community has a bike and ped committee, but how does this kind of compare to what especially our surrounding communities that we would connect to, i.e. Green Bay, Hobart, De Pere? How does it all kind of come together?
Sure. And do you mean kind of as a broader system?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do they have a specific committee that they're looking at it like we do?
So there's a mix. I believe the city of Green Bay, I know, has like a standing committee or pedestrian committee. The other communities, I believe, when we or whoever has updated their plan, they'll have a committee for that update, but they don't have a standing committee necessarily that meets regularly. So in that way, you're a little different, where you're the village is always considering these things. In terms of making connections, that was, we mapped all the existing things and also where in the surrounding communities there would be proposed facilities. And again, part of the goals and objectives of this plan are to really consider whenever there's an opportunity to make a connection with an adjacent community to really look at that. But again, it'll be kind of project driven and as that comes around.
Okay, thank you.
If I could just jump in for a second to try and tail on Kelly's question. So some of the projects that are in there, they may not have a date listed in there, but they're included as part of some of the public works projects that Brian has, and maybe Brian can tell what's coming up in the next couple of years specifically. But they might not be listed in there, but they will be included for the board's review when those public works projects come forward for bidding and putting the packet together. Brian, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, that's correct. A lot of the projects that are actually in our comp plan, they'll likely make the most sense to do when we do a full-blown reconstruct on a roadway. So you'll see in there that there is some projects that are outside of, our collectors and arterials. Projects that you guys might be most familiar with is, say, Main Ave, trail and sidewalk on Main Ave on the south side of Main Ave from Ridge Road down into De Pere. Projects like that on a county highway, of course, we're not going to rebuild the whole road, but we do want to make sure that we get a pedestrian accommodation on that segment of roadway. But however, the bulk of the projects will piggyback. For instance, we'll use Morris Ave. Morris Ave is scheduled for reconstruction next year between Holmgren and Ashland. That is a collector roadway. That'll be a discussion that we'll be having with Bike and Ped along with Village Board of whether or not it is a priority to put pedestrian accommodations on that roadway. So the biggest focus is making sure that we're kind of piggybacking our road reconstruct program.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Devin. You did a great job on this.
And if I may, I would just like to say thanks to the village staff who I worked with. They were great, and along with the Bike and Ped Committee, who definitely put in a lot of time and thought into it and really appreciated their efforts too. And it helped, I think, make a good product. So thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on.
I think
Oh, I'm sorry, we have to have a,
I'll make a motion to approve and accept the 2025 update of the Ashwaubenon Bicycle and Pedestrian Comprehensive Plan.
Second.
okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the Bike and Ped Comprehensive Plan that has been presented. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Devin. Okay. 10B, consider, discuss, act on the draft financial management plan. Greg Wenholz. There's a lot of numbers.
A lot of numbers, yes. So
A
I
lot
have
of numbers.
Adam from R.W. Baird, who helped prepare this to explain the process, and he also has Jennifer with him. So we talked about this during the budgeting time. This is going to be a new financial management plan. I think it's for the village to use, as we have some pretty large capital projects potentially along the way. It's just something we should do regardless with all the capital that we have and the changing cost environment within there. So Adam's going to walk through what this plan is, how it's kind of put together, and I think he's going to put up on the screen and have a chance to review it, have any questions, and then we'll go from there.
Trying to see how I can get this on your screen.
I can hear like a staticky sound. Can anybody else hear that?
That staticky sound, I think, is the heat
Oh.
coming through, but we've had some feedback from Gary as well, because I think he's got 2 microphones set up.
Oh, okay.
Why can't I share my screen?
Gary's frozen.
Gary's frozen.
Be coming to help you.
Are we on?
Yep, you are. We're just trying to get the presentation showing here. So here's the PDF.
Sounds Sounds like something's gonna blow. Sounds like something's gonna blow up back here.
Let me share.
We aren't hearing any ice cubes.
Presentation.
Yeah, I can email. Let me do that quicker. So it's Aaron. Is that it right there? Oh, he does have it. Okay. Awesome. Yes. Do you got a mic? Is that microphone working that I can walk her around or?
Oh, I'm not gonna talk. He's gonna talk. I will do the PowerPoint. Heard that.
Oh, is it? Okay. I can, yeah, it'll be easier if I can point this way then. All right, so I am Adam Rico with Baird. I'm Osho Ashwaubenon resident, 1384 Mohican Court. So, hi, everybody. We have been working, obviously, with the staff on what is considered to be the draft financial management plan, obviously, for the village of Ashwaubenon. The point behind this document is it's going to be very similar to a lot of your kind of capital improvement plans documents, is this is going to be ever evolving. So there's the ability to constantly kind of review this, make changes and recommendations. As it was alluded to, there is a lot of information in this thing. So I do not expect you to be experts today. It's going to be a process where what I want to kind of go over are the keys to kind of be reviewing, what we've kind of been talking with the staff, and things to kind of look at. So as we go down here, the first thing kind of that we want to hit on is we talk a little bit about the first section that's in your financial management plan, which really is kind of the types of municipal debt. So the area we start on is general obligations. So if we go down a little bit, we talk about kind of the debt structures. So you can see here on the next page, we have general obligation and revenue. So here's kind of the way the debt's set up. You can either have revenue bonds, they go up to 40 years, general obligation bonds go up to 20, geo-promissory notes go up to 20, and then bond and kind of anticipation notes go up to 5. So the next area that your financial management plan focuses on really is the general obligation section. So what we pull in is your most up-to-date information of what the village has borrowed that technically is considered general obligation. And we list all of those here as we kind of go through it. And then we get to, keep going. Stop right there. So then what we kind of do is summarize everything up and show you here on page 17, kind of if you have any offsets to your general obligations. So as you know, if you have any, water utilities, sewer utilities, which you guys do, any of those other kind of revenue funds that support some of that debt, that kind of shows the offset and then gets you to the end here, which shows the general fund debt and what potentially you as a village can put on your levy if you would so choose. Then the next part of the financial management plan that we get into then are kind of your rating factors and indicators. So you guys are rated by Moody's. So some of the things that we continue to monitor are, okay, what are obviously the municipal peers in Wisconsin and how they're rated? You can see there's 140. The majority of municipalities are kind of in that A1 to A3. So then what we did was pulled your most recent rating report. So as you can see, you guys just got on December 1st, 2025, you essentially got rated here and it shows kind of the AA2 rating and specifically the factors that are included. One of the things we've kind of been monitoring with the staff is, okay, are there possibilities for you to get a higher rating? With an AA2, that's one of the highest ratings you can get. without having to get really into some areas that aren't necessarily unachievable, but become very difficult from a financial standpoint. What the rating agencies want to see to kind of get that top rating is really then your fund balance has to be well above 40%. You have to have a lot of money in reserves, those type of things. So those are all things that we kind of continue to monitor, but that rating that you guys have is very good, and we'll get into that in a second. So then what we do is kind of pull the rating report. So you can see this is the actual rating report that was done in December. We've got all that information here, so we can kind of scroll through that. Going. And then right here. So then one of the things we then start to do then, or we'll continue to do as we continue to update this as needed by obviously the village, is we do a rating comparison. So we look at your peers. So we pulled kind of the village of Howard, the city of De Pere, the city of Neenah, the city of Oak Creek, and then obviously you are here on the end. As you can see, the majority of the peers that we kind of modeled have very similar ratings. They're either AA, AA2, or kind of in that AA3 category. We then pull a lot of the equalized value information, look at the overall debt, and then kind of compare and contrast, okay, how are you doing as far as in regards to the percentage of your statutory debt limit? How are you doing in regards to direct debt per capita? And then the other thing we focus on then on the bottom here is kind of the fund balance. So what were the fund balances? We actually pull the audited financials, so all this is coming from 2024. Look at where they are for total general fund, kind of the expenditures, and where everybody is in regards to that fund balance. So then the next thing we do in the financial management plan is pull some historicals. So we look at the equalized value. So we look at the last 20 years of your equalized value and kind of see where you have benchmarked out. As you can see here, over the 20 years, you've averaged about 3.82%. On the next page here, what we do then is try to map out, okay, if that's kind of been the benchmark over the next 20 years, where potentially if we use that 3.82%, what does that show as possible growth factors, obviously, for the village? On the next page here, we then look at your net new construction. So we pull that directly from the DOR reports. Going from 2018 to 2025, you can see you're averaging over those last couple of years here about 2.49%. Okay, this gets to the first table that in the future we can kind of continue to manipulate or play with as seen fit by obviously the village. So what this really is focusing on is your operational general fund budget. And what we're trying to kind of continually monitor is really this bottom section. This is what is essentially your fund balance. And so as we talked about with the rating agencies, what they want to see is that you continue to have a fund balance somewhere between 25 and 40%. Obviously they want it to be higher, but most of the time you're going to be somewhere between that 25% and 40% window. So what this is doing is projecting out based on your historical data and then looking at budgets and doing some projections, what potentially are things to look at into the future for impacts. So as you're planning things out as a municipality into the future, if you're considering taking on new projects, if you're considering taking on new initiatives, new staff, things like that, we can continue to kind of build this into this model and see what that does. Is that going to be things then that you're going to have to target possible, reductions in operational costs? You're going to have to come up with alternative revenue sources. Those are all things that we kind of look at. The reason why we have this highlighted is essentially that's public safety. That is the one that we know there is a guaranteed agreement that has been put in place in those years for potential increases. So we have modeled that in, and we can kind of do the same thing with other departments as well as you see fit, and we kind of continue to move this process along in future years. All right, next. So then we focus a little bit on the long-term capital plan. So what we talk about then is looking at your CIP. So if we go to the next area here, obviously, we work with you to kind of look at this. This is what was done historically, is kind of going into that December borrowing. We looked at specifically areas that you were trying to target, about $3 million. On the next page here, it kind of breaks out what it was. So essentially there was about $3 million that was related towards kind of public works projects, marina, various other items there with dump trucks and things like that. And then on the next slide here, we then also had some tax exempt projects that were related to the roof. Kind of shows you overall the existing, what the anticipated debt is. The stormwater utility then had $1.4 million of projects that were going on. On the next page here, what we look at then is, okay, based on those projects, we then can model out your debt capacity Again, as a municipality, you are allowed to have 5% of your debt in equalized value. And so this shows you how much you have remaining, about 157 million. What this also is showing is this is not modeling in any future possible issues, because there's a lot of conversation that's going to be coming up as the village about projects that you have going on, which we're going to get into in a second. So we didn't model that in so we could kind of see that, but in the future, we can consider, once you kind of make decisions on possible future projects, possible future borrowing, we'll roll that into this plan so you can kind of see that impact and continue to maintain that percentage that you need to be. So, as we just talked about in talking with the staff, you obviously have kind of your long-term visioning here and planning of priorities and projects that are going to potentially be occurring over the next couple of years. So what we did is we looked at potentially priority number 1, which was the addition and renovation of the Public Works facility, potentially somewhere between 2026 and 2028. It's about $24 million right now. Priority number 2 was the construction of the new public safety building, 2028 to 2031 for about $38 million. And priorities 3 and 4 was the renovation of Village Hall and the public safety building number 2. Again, 2031 to 2036, and talking with the staff, and those are kind of some of the estimated costs that have been considered. So what we did then on the next page is this kind of becomes the next part of the financial management plan, which is the ability to kind of model out and look at things. So the first thing we did was just took into account the existing debt service schedule. We did not essentially add in any of those projects that we just talked about, so you can kind of see those impacts. So what we have done is highlighted the areas here from 2027 to 2029. Those are the projections. So that's where right now we've done a very baseline kind of 1% increase in those expenditures, 1% increase in revenues to kind of look at that. We know that potentially you're going to be going through a reevaluation. So that now is factored in 2027. And then we'll do the same thing in 2030, because we know in 2029 and talking with the staff, you're going to do that. So these are things that we continue to kind of update to kind of showcase, okay, when you go through those reevaluations, what does that do to the assessed value? And then by kind of looking at potentially what you're levying in regards to the various projects, what does that mean essentially for your assessed mill rate, including your TIDs, and your assessed mill rate, not including your TIDs? The next part here looks at the equalized value. So it does the same thing. What we're doing then, as we talked about, using that kind of historical 20-year average of 3.82%, we've now modeled in the increase for your equalized value, and we can continue to look at as projects and initiatives kind of are considered by obviously the village. We can model those in here and see what potentially that is going to do to the equalized mill rate. On the next one here, so now what we did then is understanding that you have some possible future facility conditions and space needs plans coming up. We've started to model those in very basic to look at, okay, if you were to take on those projects, and as of right now did a very straight line kind of debt service model with principal and interest, what does that essentially do to your assessed values and your equalized? So that's the green. So what the green is showing you there is potentially taking on those projects in kind of that time frame. We've modeled in the possible debt service that would be needed for those, the impact then that those particular items would have on your mill rates, and you can see that here. As well, then on the next slide, you've got the equalized value kind of equation doing the same thing. All right. So then we get into your tax increment financing districts. And again, the point of a financial management plan is obviously you have multiple items going on. You've got some debt going into it, you've got some long-term planning, you've got your capital improvement planning, you got your TIDs. This kind of the hope of this is to be able to come kind of a one-stop shop for you, obviously as elected officials, also as residents and also as staff, to kind of continually look at everything in one comprehensive document. So essentially we pull in your TID data. You've got two TIDs, TIF 3 and TIF 5. This kind of shows you the information of what are TIDs, how it kind of flows. Here's the two TID maps that you have, the 2025 value information that has occurred for both TIDs. And then what we do then on the next slides here are kind of model out, okay, looking at the performas, what's the revenue, what's the anticipated expenditures. And again, as projects kind of continue in those TIDs, we can continue to update that and update these slides to kind of include that modeling. Okay, then to kind of wrap up the financial management plan, we then focus on some of the special revenue funds or the enterprise funds. So we look at your water utility, and what we do then are run coverage analysis. And what we are trying to make sure is that potentially with your water and a lot of your utilities, is that from a revenue standpoint, they want to see 1.5% coverage. Do you have that? So what we look at then is look at your actual data and then run some budget and projections, and we want to see that you are maintaining that 1.5. You can see here that you are for the water, so that's great. We then do the same thing for the sewer, kind of look into that equation. Right now you don't have any debt, so you're definitely meeting that requirement. And then we also do the same thing for, here obviously is the storm sewer, showing the debt that's there. And what we want to see is that you're above a 1.5 for annual debt service coverage, and you're above 2. So you're definitely meeting those requirements. So as you continue to think about future projects and things that could impact the utilities, we can model that in and kind of see how that goes. The final section of your financial management plan basically just looks at the policies that you have in place. So what we do is we basically pull in your fund balance policy, look into everything that kind of maintains into that, your investment policy, everything that kind of flows into that and kind of the notes. We then also look at the other policies here on the last page regards your debt management, your purchasing policy, and you guys actually just recently created a structurally balanced budget policy, which is great. So that's one of the things, obviously, talking with Greg. He's kind of monitoring what those policies are and making those recommendations with Joel to the board. And what we do is just kind of continually look at that, and what we've assessed is, again, you have some very strong management policies in place, and you should continue to do what you're doing, kind of review them on an annual basis. That is your financial management plan in a nutshell.
Okay, are there any questions for Adam? Greg, anybody questions? Okay, so do we need to receive and place on file, or?
Yeah, that's essentially what you need to do. There's no action necessary to adopt the plan or anything. As Adam has pointed out, it's a living, breathing document that will continually be updated based on the changing priorities and project lists that come forward from the board. So it's just kind of a receive and place on file, and we'll continue to update the plan as projects evolve and develop. I guess at this point, does anyone have questions for Adam or Greg as far as what the outlook looks like at this point, especially for those larger scale projects that we know are on the horizon? That was really the basis for the financial management plan, is to give you a clearer picture as to what that financial outlook is if we were to take on these very large and financially substantial projects.
It's kind of early. Kind of early to be able to tell at this point, so I don't really have any questions now.
Okay, I need a motion to receive and place on file.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second to receive the draft financial management plan and place on file. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed. Motion carried. 10C, consider, discuss, act on the transfer of TID number 4 closure funds. Craig.
So we closed TID 4 2 years ago, essentially. We held it open for a year for affordable housing, and now we're at a point where it's officially closed. Final audit was completed, and final paperwork to the DOR was submitted, so it's officially closed. So the next steps in what we do in a TID closure is we look at what funds are out and available. In this case, TID 4, after all final payments, we had a couple debt service payments for 2 years out. Those are all been paid, everything's out there. And the fund balance has a balance of just under $3.2 million. So what do we do with that money? By state statute, we have to pay out the tax and refund the taxing jurisdictions. And it's a formula based off of the tax increment, which is a document that's created in December, sent to the state. So based on those percentages, so whatever percent went to West Appear School District, NWTC, so on and so forth, they would get that same percentage of this amount of money. So I showed you what they got paid out, and they've already been paid. We got that completed so that it would be off the books. Everything would be done for the end of the year. That way that fund is officially closed. However, we do get a portion of that money as well. So in the tune of $971,507.49. So what we wanted to do was, I met with Mary and Joel, and we talked about, where are we at, what kind of options we have, what are our needs, When we closed TID 1, we sent a large chunk of money over to the Employee Retirement Fund, for example. In this case, we have two real immediate needs in the short term and long term, ongoing. One being large equipment. You've seen we've been having to borrow for dump trucks and garbage trucks and things like that. The other is in street construction, our mill pave program, which those costs soared, and we didn't quite have the amount of tax increment going there. We said we're continually trying to build that up year over year. And so between those two areas, we felt the recommendation would be for these TID $4 would be to put it towards capital equipment needs, vehicles specifically. We have a pipeline over the next 5 years, a lot of more dump trucks, a couple garbage trucks, fire trucks, things like that. So the recommendation is for these funds to transfer them out into equipment replacement fund was traditionally what we've used, but because now that we're borrowing, I've created, and I worked with the auditors to create a capital projects fund specifically for large equipment that we're gonna bond for, so we're not charging back the departments for the interest on it anymore. So the recommendation would be to move this amount of funds into a capital projects fund to be used for large vehicle equipment in the future. Certainly you can strike that and recommend something else, but that's what we think would be the best use of these funds. When you think about TIF and all the new roads and things that, hey, here's something tangible that the residents can see and feel, some equipment that's being used to service those roads. Maybe it's a garbage truck or some, or plowing the streets with these trucks, things like that. Those costs are in the range of, $300,000 to $400,000 for those pieces of equipment. So unfortunately, this won't go too far, but hey, if we can get 3 pieces of equipment out of it, that's a pretty good deal. So that's the recommendation to the board. So that's all I have.
Just to elaborate on Greg's point, so Mary, Greg, and I, when we met and discussed, we looked at kind of 3 funds where that money could be transferred to based on the priorities that the village board has established. Obviously, the building improvement fund, because we have those large-scale projects in the future. But again, to Jay's point, I don't know that we've made a final determination on what those projects look like. So placing that money in there kind of seemed to some degree maybe a little bit short-sighted at this point because there are other pressing needs. We also looked at both our mill pave program, and again, we've been able to fund that through existing dollars. So we would basically be injecting a one-time amount of cash flow into that program for future projects that haven't been clearly defined. And then we looked at, as Greg pointed out, the equipment replacement fund, or the equipment capital replacement fund, if you will, or capital equipment fund. And the reason we chose that one or recommended that one to you is because the board has already made commitments to equipment that is scheduled for delivery in 2027, 2028. And so these funds would go specifically towards those purchases that have already been authorized and are just waiting payment. So it basically covers a portion of the cost for that equipment that has already been obligated by the village.
The cost of equipment has just gotten so expensive, and I remember when I first got here 9 years ago, we had some of our trucks that our staff were using, and they had stop signs for the floorboards. So luckily, we don't have that anymore, but it costs money to purchase those vehicles, so, as everybody knows when they go buy a new vehicle.
Yeah, as much as I'd like to see it go into the roads and things like that, I think the more pressing need at this time is the equipment, just because how much inflation has hit that. It's just very difficult for us to keep up, and we hate to get into that budget situation where we gotta start impacting taxes in order to be able to cover that, because we can't run our services without the equipment, is what it boils down to. So I feel that's the appropriate place to put it, in my opinion.
And I should note that the next agenda item will address potential 2025 surplus in the general fund. It'll be recommended those dollars go towards the streets, towards the mill pay program.
Jay, I kind of agree with you on what you're saying, but boy, don't go short on the roads. We've got some nice roads in our community compared to the other communities. I do not want to see us fall behind on roads. To me, that's important to our people.
Agreed.
Agreed.
So I'll make the motion to transfer TID four, fund balance of $971,507.49 to the equipment replacement fund.
Second.
Actually,
Or
To the
capital projects fund
yes,
to be used for large vehicle equipment.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to transfer TID 4 fund balance of 971,507.49. Any other discussion?
I just have a question. If we're gonna, if this is worded equipment replacement or a capital projects fund,
right, as I mentioned, I created a capital projects fund specifically for large equipment.
oh, that's right, yeah.
Right,
yeah,
and that would go to that one,
Okay.
not for
Yep,
some
okay.
other programs.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to approve that. Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 10D, consider, discuss, act on a transfer of 2025 general fund excess fund balance. Greg?
So to continue on a similar discussion, this is specifically related to the general fund, the 2025 general fund results. I don't have final audited numbers. Audit will take place at the end of February into March. But at this point in time, it looks like we'll have a favorable variance somewhere between 300,000 to 400,000, if you will. And mostly really, I've noted in here some variances here and there, but really interest income. We kind of thought that could happen again. We don't want to budget because we know that eventually those rates are going to come down. So we had some excess funds there. There were some other variances here and there. Operationally, things pretty much went as planned, but room tax is a little bit higher. Intergovernmental revenues, EMS got a state rescue aid more than they anticipated, things like that. So I would recommend with the excess funds for the general fund, which we do every year, we do move those out, because if you don't move them out and then you spend them in the future, sometimes the rating agencies look like you overspent or underspent according to your budget. We would move those to the street reconstruction fund for mill pay program to help fund that, as Gary and Jay both alluded to. So we recommended that's one of the 3 projects that we talked about internally, that it makes sense to put it there.
Greg, how much money is going there?
It'll be somewhere around 350 to 400,000, depending on the final audit. Certainly, things could come up in there that we didn't anticipate, and I think everything looks good, but you just never know. I don't like to. So what you would recommend is whatever that excess is at the end of the year, that it would go towards there.
And Greg, what are we putting towards the road fund that we budgeted?
We kind of, in this year's budget, we did a one-time reduction of 200,000. I don't want to get into that discussion that we had. It'll bounce back up to 750,000. So this would add on top of that. We do have a little bit of carryover from prior years. What we're trying to do, Gary, is bridge the gap, so we continually add more levy dollars into that fund to cover the cost of doing the roads, to somewhere in the 1.1 million-ish range, to get to where we need to be. So this would help bridge that gap for a year or two, and hopefully we can continue to add property tax levy dollars to that fund to address the street needs. And I'm working with Brian and Steve Burr internally to understand where are we at, how are our ratings, what do you anticipate over this year, next year, and they understand that we're trying to just maintain and fix where we can, and we'll just keep doing that going forward.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to transfer the final 2025 general fund excess fund balance to the street construction fund.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to transfer the final 2025 general fund excess fund balance to street construction fund. Any other comments, concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 10E, consider, discuss, act on bid award for Ridge Road standpipe removal. Brian Rickert.
Alrighty, so well over a month ago on December 16th, we did open bids for the Ridge Road standpipe removal. That's the standpipe that's located on Ridge Road, just south of Circle Drive. With that being said, we did have 3 eligible bidders. The bids did vary in the amount of 160,000 all the way up to 235,000. With that being said, village staff is recommending that we award the contract to Eisler Demolition for the amount of $160,300.
Is this the same procedure that you're doing on Babcock that hasn't started in the demolition yet?
That's a good question, Gary. So, same procedure, but much easier. So Babcock, the challenge with Babcock is we had to build a cell tower because there was cell providers on that standpipe. So there's been hangups with the cell providers because they were working to get permitting through the federal government, through the FAA and FCC. With the federal government shutdown, their permits were delayed, which then delayed the relocation from the standpipe to the cell tower. That work likely should kick off here in March. All the cell providers should be moved, I would say, almost by the end of this week, pending that they don't run into anything that's unique. But yeah, that project did stretch on a little longer than anticipated. It's strictly due to the government shutdown and permitting that we ran.
Are there any cell towers on Ridge that have to be transferred to a pole?
Nope, there are no cell providers. There is one antenna that's up there. We do not know actually who owns it. The wires are actually severed. We thought potentially, historically, maybe back in the future, it was part of the school district system. We had the school district take a look at it. They said if it is theirs, they don't need it. And the wires and all the insulating on the actual cables is completely cracked and gone. The wire is severed. Don't know how long it's been like that, so that'll just be coming down as with part of the actual standpipe. It should be noted that neither of these standpipes have had water in them for well over 15 years. Water throughout our system is actually the pressures generated from our two water towers. The water does come from the city of Green Bay at about 117 PSI. So, you know, our water pressure is actually just being maintained by our existing water towers. The pressure itself is coming from the city of Green Bay where we purchase our water from.
And what two towers are they or where are those located?
Marvell and Glory. So you got the one at the intersection of Ridge and Glory, and then Ridge and Marvell. So.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, no problem.
Okay, does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll move to award the Ridge Road standpipe removal to Eisler Demolition in an amount of $160,300.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to award the Ridge Road standpipe removal to Eisler Demolition in the amount of $160,300. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. 10F, consider, discuss, act on the process to fill the vacancy for the office of trustee for wards 11 and 12. Joel?
Right, thank you, Madam President. As Mary had alluded to during written announcements and communications, Trustee Tracy Fluke has recently resigned her position as trustee for wards 11 and 12. That was vacated effective January 2nd. The village board has an opportunity to determine how to proceed to fill that vacancy. There are a few options available to the village board for consideration. The first is to leave the seat vacant for the remainder of the term, which would end April 18th, 2027. The memo has indicated 2026, but it is 2027, so about a year from now. You can certainly request to hold a special election to fill the vacancy. I would note that if that is the route desired, that election would occur outside of the April election that's scheduled upcoming here in 2026 due to the timeline required to declare candidacy and submit nomination papers. Or third, to appoint a resident of wards 11 and 12 to serve the remainder of the term, to which point that individual could then run for office when that term expires, much like some of you have. Traditionally, the village has gone the route of appointing a resident member from the district in which the seat was vacated. If that's the case, then if that's the direction the board would like to proceed, following tonight's meeting, we would solicit applications from residents, to which point they would be submitted to the village president for review, and then provided for the village board at your next meeting in February, at which point you would then interview those candidates, and then at that meeting actually take an action voting to appoint a member to the board. pending the appointment of that member would then take a seat at the board at that meeting and then proceed as trustee for the remainder of that term. So at this time, I'll be happy to answer any questions or take direction from the board as to proceed.
Joe, you did say that we could not have an election at this April, date coming up for the, nominee?
Correct. If you were to choose to hold an election to fill the seat for the remainder of the term, that election would not be held during the April general election, in which all other local seats are held, because of the timeline required to circulate nomination papers and declare candidacy has passed. So it would ultimately likely result in a special election, which would add costs to the village to do so.
All right, I think the way to go would be to take some people's names and do the interviewing at the next board meeting.
I would agree with Gary on
Yeah.
that.
I agree. I think we appoint someone based on applications and interviews. I think it's faster and less expensive than
Yep.
Yep.
all
And
the other options.
I wouldn't want to leave it vacant for a year either.
No.
No.
No, I agree with that. Okay.
Is that a motion, Kelly?
Yes.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second to take applications and have interviews at the February board meeting for the vacant seat in trustee ward 11 and 12. Other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 11, agenda items for the next meeting. If anybody has anything, give the office a call. Number 12, convene into closed session. During the meeting, the village board of the Village of Ashwaubenon may convene into closed session pursuant to A, B, and C as related to your form here. I need a motion going to closed session.
Motion to go into closed session?
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Service?
Yes.
Trustee Paul?
No.
Thank you, Jerry. Trustee Zerbal?
Yes.
Trustee Atkinson?
Yes.
Trustee Krieger?
Yes.
President Kardasky?
Yes. Thank you.